Really good to have you here, Cags. Paul, thank you for joining us.
No worries.
Only our third episode. We've had the pleasure of a couple of guests prior to you, and it's been a bit of a journey across junior football, women's football, also the experience of moving between states. Simon McPhee coming across from the west to over here, and a little bit of a touch on elite football, which you've experienced as well. It's about people's journeys, and I think one of the interesting things that I had in the conversation with you yesterday was the conversation around luck and how it's too easy to just talk to that point. So I thought maybe if you could just give us a little bit of the history of your journey, taking as much time as you want, going all the way back to playing days, and then just talking about the evolution, looking at some career choices around becoming a PE teacher and then evolving into a coach, and just talking about some of the planning and thinking that went through that. Maybe there are some intersections and moments which could be called luck, but I think it'd be as fun to explore how you got yourself into those positions.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Look, at the footy journey, probably I can go back all the way to junior footy and the Morty Bray Junior Footy Club. As a junior, I left for 1 year. I think it was under 15s, and went to Beaumaris for a year. Came back for 16s, and then in the Dragons pathways. But through all of that, there was a keen interest in athletics and doing that the whole way through. And the grounding of I know we touched on it yesterday in our chats around the importance, I think, of little athletics for a young kid, and what that actually can offer, provided it's done in the right environment. But I played a couple of seasons in the Southern Footy League for Parkdale as an 18 and 19-year-old, and then went to athletics sort of full-time, if you could call it that, and didn't play footy for a couple of years. To St Bede's Mentone Tigers in 2004 was the first year, where we were in B grade, and we managed to finish fourth. I think we lost this first semi to Old Ivanhoe from memory. And then the next year was 2005, and we actually got relegated. And Bevo jumped on as an assistant playing coach that year to get back into footy. So he came on as a playing assistant. We got relegated. We had a shocking last ground against Pegs, Essendon Grammar, out at Essendon, where we lost in circumstances that were shocking for us to get relegated. Sent us back to C grade. Russell Barnes left, and Bevo took over as the coach. So we then obviously had a pretty good run. We'll obviously talk a little bit about that. And then in about 2008 or 2009, I started doing some athletics, sort of running coaching at Stingrays for the 18s and the 16 boys. Then that's evolved to line coaching at TAC level, and then taking a couple of coaching gigs. Monash Blues, the first one in the Ammos, then the Bulldogs, and now back at now at St Bernard's in the Ammos.
That stepping back to being in Bayside and moving from Parkdale or coming across to St Bede's with mates, looks like it was timely in terms of an experience.
Oh yeah, definitely. We spoke about that little bit of core mates that played school footy together, that sort of hadn't played for a few years, that I was close with. Some of them very good players, some of them not so good, that ran around the twos and the threes. But just that social aspect was the most important thing. And then, and obviously Bevo coming in transformed all of that for us. We went back to C grade and picked up 4 or 5 guys that had played in paid leagues, that like Sam Anstey's and Paul Brennan's and these guys, to come back to the footy, to come to our footy club. And we were a pretty good side, C grade. And obviously that just sort of moulded into what it turned out to be 3 fabulous years.
Having taken up coaching, can you reflect back? Could you see things coming? Did you have a sense, like maybe just by a different style of coaching that was being presented to you? Maybe it was about communication styles. Were there things that you could sense, or if you reflect on it now being a coach?
If I reflect on it now, you clearly go, well, you did really well to harness the environment that was sort of created. There was, we had recovery down at Mentone Beach and came back to the club rooms, and there was a full banquet put on, big table down the middle, would have been 30 newspapers, everything like milk, fruit juice, anything like that, a full brekkie cooked up for us. And I reckon we stayed there for 8 hours that day, because it then turned into cards, and it wasn't a drinking type thing. It was just a social, turn into cards, turn into being there for the afternoon. And that was a real catalyst, because then we had to then play in a prelim final the next weekend, potential to go out in straight sets. And I still remember Bevo talking about that different media things he's done. So that was probably his most nervous time as a coach, was that period, that C grade one. So you do look back at little things that you pinch as a coach, and you put into practice and you put into play. Some of it works when you're coaching your own team, some of it doesn't. But that's part of the what you experimenting as a coach as well.
Even just reflecting on that moment, I think maybe I can hear a couple of things. One is ignore the result and go to the connection. And the second is don't get down on yourself. Don't take a mental journey of doubt. Stay even. Could you
appreciated your efforts as footballers, whether you won or lost? Like, it's the fact that you're out there having a crack for the club as well, but also for your mates and that, and little things like a free beer. Like a free beer in ammo footy goes a long, long way.
Anywhere.
Oh, but it does. And those little things where you come in the bar and then all of a sudden someone races over you from the committee or an older bloke and goes, "Here you go, I've just bought you a beer. Well done today." Those little things do last on you. And it's not so much a beer, it could be pizzas in the change room post game, and that has a different, like, there's a multitude of reasons why you would do that. But just little things, just little things. But socially, we probably went, like, we partied pretty hard, but we played pretty hard. And I think that was part of it as well. Like, I think that really grew to, and we were behind closed doors once we got off the field. If we'd won the game, when we were with ourselves, we were really quite arrogant. And there was a real celebration once we were just ourselves. And some clubs may have seen that, snippets of it, and thought, geez, these guys are getting carried away. But it was a real, if we won a game, it was a huge celebration. Like the video you saw of the Bulldogs the other week with the music in the club room, that doesn't surprise me at all. I've obviously seen it, but that was going back. We had blokes organised with passion pop bottles, with streamers, with little blowy things that in the team song, if we won, when we got back in there, the boys would race to get them out of their bags and they'd celebrate a win. If you lost, leave them in the bags, bring them next week. But if it was a win, then it was like, I remember a game at Melbourne High. We smashed them. I think it was in C grade. And it was just out of, like, the music and everything post game. But it was a real celebration.
I think the nice thing about that is that we sometimes think of it at an elite level, and what's the magic sauce, and yet some of these things that are truly irrespective of level of football, about connection and harvesting and developing relationships with teammates, with coaches, with club. And to hear that, I was thinking about that social media piece. Preferred not to have got out, but it's clearly indicative of some things have just travelled along the way with Bevo. The 3 years, did you begin to think that within that 3 years, coaching is something you wouldn't mind following?
Yeah, definitely. It was one, I still remember, it was a function night. And I can't remember what year it was of those three, but obviously being a teacher and being around Luke, and I remember him saying, you should aim to coach this club one day. And that, I think, just triggered to start doing some running coaching at Stingrays, and then start doing the under 16 program there whilst I was working in Berwick at Beacon Hills College. And so I'd come back to Dandenong on the way through Mordialloc and stop then the sessions, the night sessions there. And Mark Wheeler and Darren Flanagan were huge for me, almost just letting me go and coach it in that environment. So that was amazing to just experience, starting from a running little athletics coach to then working through that on the back of a simple sort of comment around you should aim to coach. It's got like, I probably won't coach it, but I live out west now. But there's still, that little comment certainly planted a seed as a teacher, and I'd started to do a lot of coaching at school, obviously with the programs we had there. So I was coaching a lot of school teams. At Beacon Hills and Berwick there. So that was sort of overlapping at the time where I was taking like a year 8 team for footy and a year 10 team, and then maybe a grade 4 team and that sort of stuff. So that sort of just got the ball rolling to think, maybe I could do this, and maybe as a teacher, there's something there that I can help them with.
Yeah, you touched on it before, and it comes out quite regularly in talking about what you participate in terms of athletics and the benefits that it has to football. Can you talk us through it a little bit about that? Because it seems to anchor some of your thinking and maybe generates and becomes your philosophy in terms of what it enables a young boy or girl to become a better possible footballer.
Yeah, I'm pretty strong with my opinions around junior footy, especially, and the athletics piece as well. The background to that is my oldest daughter's just started little athletics, and to spend 5 hours and do 4 events on a Saturday morning isn't. People are just going to be turned away. Like, they can enjoy it, but also about their performance, like about just enjoying it and wanting to do it. Like, it's an ultimate challenge for a kid that's not that fast. Can you keep him at little athletics? Because how do you can you stagger races so that they're off different distances so it's an even finish? I'm not sure. But then that flows into the junior footy. And Morty Bray were very good when I was living over that way. That Neil Jenkins, who's now president of Parkdale Vultures, was really, really good. He saw that there was some talented kids coming through and wanted to put in a director of development, which was a good little paying gig for me, but it meant that I was able to work with some of these younger, talented kids. And Tim Taranto was one that rolled through, Blake Howes and Finn Callahan, and they were under 9s when I was in that, doing that sort of stuff in there. So, look, I'm a very big believer that there shouldn't be scoreboards still under 12s. The kids just want to play. Why I mentioned this to you yesterday. Why are we not looking at 3 different 6-on-6 games on one ground, as opposed to one 18-on-18 game for under 8 and under 9 kids? Because all of a sudden you put 3 footballs out there, there's 3 kicks happening every time as opposed to 1 kick. And that's the biggest challenge as a junior coach, as a junior player, is to get as many touches as you can. So pretty strong with that. But I also get I get that now it's easy for me to make those comments because I'm now just coaching seniors and I'm in a win-loss environment. So I'm not in that environment, but from my exposure and it might change now that I'm a parent, but from my exposure with that, there's some challenges that the game, soccer are doing it very well. And we're in a lot of trouble if we don't change a fair bit of stuff with our junior stuff coming through.
Volume, one ball, 36 kids. Let's change that to one ball, 6 kids.
Yeah, and just little, like, if you're an under 14 coach and you're and you're coming up against a team that you're going to beat, or who knows, have a conversation with the other team and say, who's your best player? Have you got a really good kid as well? Let's play them on each other. Yeah, you'd probably jeopardizing the chance for you to win the game, but the development that best player gets out of it is far greater, and probably all the other kids as well, because that kid can't just run around doing what he's done every week. He actually has a game where he has to struggle against a good opponent. So those little things, but we get too caught up in, as adults, wanting to win. And the junior under 14 premiership means the world. And it's like, yeah, that's a real tricky one.
I think we could probably dedicate 3 episodes to that. 100%. And I know that Paul Carrigan has sat in a position where it's been something that's been challenged multiple times and has had to weave diplomacy into a discussion to provide an outcome that's enjoyable to a very large community. So it's something I think we all wrestle with, and the philosophies of participation remain sound. The development remains important, and finding that no one's left behind is the challenge that we have to make sure that we're good as community or community leaders or role models. Moving through to Sandy, came across the Sandy Dragons. It was a chance to do education, but also to take on an emerging opportunity, and something that maybe not so many people recognise was going to be a fantastic part of Aussie Rules, was to start working with women. Was that something that you chose to do? It was offered to you. You could see the possibilities.
So I stepped into the line coach of the Dragons with Dale Tapping, and that came through. It's funny, our reserves coach at St Bede's is Tim Lamb, who now is the recruiting manager for Melbourne. So he's put that. So he actually did it for a year and then stepped away. So I jumped into that spot with an incredible crew of people, and we still we managed to win a flag. So, but we still have a message through. We still really stay in touch, and Joycey's coached collegians as well, and Vanders is down at Brighton Affairs, and these guys have kept going with their footy. Hughesy's coaching Noble Park. And then by chance, and I can't really remember how it all happened, but through the networks of the girls, and I took on, they had 2 teams. They had the Victorian team, and then they had the Victorian development team. So I took on the Victorian development team. Basically, the best 25 girls are all in the Vic team, and then I have the next ones. So that was another. I was treating it like NAB League, really, because you're not really. So I coached that for 2 years, I think, and didn't win a game in that, but had so much fun. It was really, and there's a number of girls who played in that and now are playing AFLW, played in that development league. In that role.
Sorry, Paul, when you say you had so much fun, what brought the fun to it?
Oh, there wasn't a heap of pressure on me as a coach, because you sort of go in knowing that if we can be competitive and nearly win a game, then that's a huge that's a huge result. But we were competitive in most games, and just couldn't get over the line. But it was more creating that for the girls as well, so that they had a really and a lot of them were 15 and 16-year-olds. So getting them away to Queensland for a week and a couple of games, Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday with the games. So, sort of to be able to it just gives you another grounding of dealing with people.
So was that a case of finding other things to measure other than W's and L's that kept your connection and engagement? Is that part of it? The pressure's off on W's and L's, but you want to find something else to.
Looking back on it, probably, yeah. You just didn't like. It was almost, you're almost measuring it on, just on the acts and the vision you're showing, just on like the team acts as such. And if we could get not so much stats around that, but more the vision to show afterwards. And we sort of did a countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of the best team acts from that game. And that was more the vision that we focused on. It was like little things like you pick your player up off the ground and all that, but teaching the girls what footy involves, because they haven't played it. A lot of them had come from different sports. So that rolled through to, they did then split Vic Metro, Vic Country, and they did it properly, as opposed to all the good kids going to Vic Metro to Victoria. So I coached the Vic Metro team, which probably wasn't a true representation of Vic Metro, Vic Country. And we managed to win that one in Shepparton. That would have been 2013-ish, I think. And like so many of those girls are playing AFLW now from that. Managed to draft a number of them myself when I was going through that process. So the relationships that you build with that, probably the main one that I've got out of that is with Ellie Blackburn, that just the development. I've seen her from a 14-year-old and worked with her through that whole period.
You talked about something related to the Western Bulldogs and the women's team. It sounds like you've built up a good understanding of coaching young women and developing women coming through, developing talent. Take us through that couple of years with the Western Bulldogs, because the little bits that you were indicating when we chatted previously around styles of communication, methods of feedback, ambition around game styles. It sounds like you had to do a fair bit of adjusting. Maybe that kind of adjustment might happen probably happens in any circumstance where a new coach comes in, but it also appears illustrative of nuance between men's and women's football.
So in between that was Monash Blues, which I'm sure you'll touch on a little bit later, but it was missing out on some tack jobs and the feedback, coach your own team. So then the ammo's setting on you. So I went for the Monash job and got that job. And then the Bulldogs comes along. So the previous experience in women was a big tick. And then obviously a relationship with Luke and Jamie Maddox, who was there as a coach as well through that period, certainly helped in the process of landing that job. And then came in as general manager and footy and head coach as well. So you were doing everything. So it was a tricky little juggling act. You're talking contracts and you're also talking coaching stuff. So it's not ideal. And then our first year, I was employed about a month before the Bulldogs won the 2016 grand final. So I got to sit in all the meetings, got to sit in everything in the lead up. Was in the meeting room grand final day. And so I walked out of there going, I've got insight into what the game plan is to win a premiership. Here you go, girls. This is what I presented to them. This is the plan. When we went back after a season, it was like, wow, we've missed the mark completely with and I don't say this in a bad way, I say this in a realistic way. We missed the mark on where the girls were at with their skill development because there's some girls that never played footy before. Their actual first game of footy was walking onto an AFLW game ground in round one or the practice game. They've actually never played a game. So I'm trying to implement this game plan, which was a bit of like handball happy that the Bulldogs were doing and all that sort of stuff. So we got a lot of feedback. I got a lot of feedback from the girls, but I asked for that as well. And that was hugely powerful because you can, as a coach, go, well, they actually don't know what they're talking about. I know I'm not going to thanks for your input, but I'm not going to listen to it. And we go with the way I think it should be. Whereas they were really, really quiet. There was a couple that were really quite poignant, making sure whether they felt threatened about list spots and they hadn't had a good year. I'm not sure, but they were really good. And then we need to go back to complete. They need to be able to pick the ball up. Like the ball's rolling to them, they need to not fumble. Like that's the cornerstone of our whole game. So we put Andrew Shakespeare on, old Shaky. He's a legend of a fella, but he came on as the development academy coach. So basically what it was first half of every training session up until round one was development academy. I would use my PowerPoint with the labels to move them around in 6 rotations of sort of 8 minutes. And then they would have that out there with me on the board or on the piece of paper. And they would activities with 5 or 6 girls without any fatigue. So they didn't do running until after all of the development academy. And it was purely focused on just that skill development side of it, which transformed everything that we're doing. So all of a sudden they got better. And we got to the point where we managed to make the grand final, and then got the chocolate.
Talk to us a little bit about not only were you doing that by skill development, your communication development. You identified something that you needed to do, a subtle difference or a significant difference in terms of the way you would talk to your playing group post-match.
So the women are coming off Monash, where I came in and started coding the games. So the boys got would send it to them so they could watch all their clips. And I thought, this is Monash, I'll be able to roll this over to the girls. So started doing that the first week, first couple of weeks, and then that was my feedback to them, was their clip. We're back. They don't necessarily care about the stats that were happening. It was, and so there's a website that I went to town on. It's What Drives Winning. They do a seminar in America where they bring in all the coaches and all the good coaches. Well, not even the good coaches, some bad, and I think it's What Drives Winning, and they've got probably 10-minute little clips on their website from their seminars. And there was one US female basketball college coach that spoke about this your thoughts thing. And so she said after pretty much every game, definitely after every game, but then a lot of sessions, there would be pretty much a blank piece of paper with your thoughts written on the top, and for the girls to grab a pen, and then they go to town with that piece of paper. Initially, when we started it, we did 1 session a week, so their hard main match sim session, and that rolled into them as soon as they walk in the rooms, before they do any rehab, before they do any ice cooling down, anything like that, there was this piece of paper for them to go and give me their thoughts. So it's not a recount. It's not, I was like telling them that I was there watching the game, funnily enough. I actually want to know what they're feeling, what's frustrating them, what's good, what's going well, why you played like this, blah, blah, blah. And then I think on the bottom of it, they had to acknowledge one player for their efforts, and then a reason why. So then at the post that, I would count up all the votes, and then someone would be awarded with the little jersey that they wear. But on the board, on the presentation for the first training session after a game, I would make sure I put up the comments as well what other players were saying about these girls. So, for example, player X wins with 6 votes. This is what all the girls have said about him. So that was almost taken priority over vision. And any of the, you need to be standing here, you need to be standing there. Why didn't you kick it like this? I would then take those, collect them all. So we walk in from a game, win, lose or draw. You let them sing the song. Before I talk to them and change the way they feel, they do their sheet. So it's a bit out there and it's a bit different. But once they got used to it, they expected it to be. There was one game where we actually forgot the sheets, and they're all like in a tiz because it wasn't there. But I would then, my feedback to them would then be handwritten to them. So down the bottom, I'd put coaches' comments, and then I would handwrite a message back to them as my feedback. I to be honest, I didn't really even code the games much. It was more getting these your thoughts done, so that when they came back in, it was in their locker, and they could put it in their folder. They had a big folder. They could put it in there so that they had that, and they could read what I said back to them. And then if they wanted a clarification, they had that starting point for a conversation. But you can also sugarcoat, giving them a little bit of a clip when you're handwriting it, but they also sit there and go, oh, wow, you're spending all this time handwriting, you're actually physically doing it, as opposed to writing on the computer, a bit like school reports. Oh, have you just cut and paste that? And no, I haven't. If I'm doing a footy one, if I'm doing school reports, maybe different. But if it's a footy one, it's genuinely written. And that worked really well. That was a real because it was you're getting the feedback to you so that you know what's going on and you can deal with those conversations.
Have you carried that forward into any other environment?
So St Bernard's, they'd laugh. The boys would laugh at me if I started trying something like that, I reckon. But I've started. You get your feedback's like crucial, because you can get so much from it. It might be uncomfortable for you to hear some of it, but if you actually give the opportunity for the boys to, so like in a question in a forms sort of survey, if you give that and go, well, what are your frustrations? What am I not doing well? And so you give them a bit of a license. They will tell you some real crucial information. So we do that. I called it, we got a little sponsor at the footy club. It was a cracking eggs, player of the week. We had singlets made up this year that I'd send a survey on a Sunday. It's feedback from the game. What did you think? Some give you 1-word answers, and you know instantly, like, and it's all named as well, so you know who it is. And you do say to them, look, it's confidential. This is only for me as the head coach to actually read. Then they have to nominate one player for the cracking eggs. And from that, they nominate and also give a reason why. And I tried to do it a little bit with that this year. It works pretty well. With that side of it, the hardest part is getting the singlet back off the bloke for the Tuesday night.
Good condition.
It's been okay, but if they, like ammo footy, if they don't come on the Tuesday night from the week before, you don't get your singlet back. So because you want them to train in it, it's a visual thing. The Bulldogs use a domestique cycling polka dot jersey. That's a bit where I got the idea from as well, but that's done very well. And we were really keen to make sure we had a reserves one as well, a thirds and under 23s, and I think the 19s ended up getting one made once we'd made 4 of them. So it's a whole club thing. It was a little bit trickier, obviously, with COVID and everything. Getting I didn't do many meetings with Vision and everything this year. So you're on the ground. You have to check you have to make sure the votes you've tallied them and all that sort of stuff. There is a little bit of management to it, but I think it's a really positive thing.
Rosie, I know you've got 3 young ones, but we've just got a couple of questions. Do you mind hanging in for another 10 minutes? Would that be all right? Just going back to my, sorry, because you illustrated something about a coach being aware of the kind of organisational environment that you're going into. Maybe if you'd just like to share a little bit of what it was like to be at Monash Blues and how different an organisation it was and what that meant in terms of the way that you could manage your team, your players.
So when I made that decision, I'll start applying for a few senior coaching jobs, and Monash sort of appealed to me. I'd seen that they'd finished 3rd or 4th the year before in C grade, so I knew they were thereabouts. Actually knew the coach, the previous coach. I knew I taught his son out at Beacon Hills and Berwick, and he was a pretty loud, sort of demonstrative, give him a spray. So I sort of thought that might be my demeanour might be a little bit different to that, and we might be able to approach it from a different angle. And then came the difference of being a university club as opposed to playing a sort of an old boys club and then also a district club in Parkdale. I thought it'd be pretty good to get an understanding, and literally pre-season doesn't happen. Pre-season means you got 10 blokes over the summer period because they're all back in the country. If they most of them live on res, so they get kicked out for the summer, and then a few trickle back before O week. You see 0 during O week, and then you get 150 the next week. 25 to 30 of those were international students who thought it was social sport, rolling into a full ground drill with everyone. On that first session was challenging, but it was also it's a player-led club. It's a player-run club. The committee's all players. I never had the full 22 we made the grand final, lost the grand final the first year, got promoted, never had the 22 from a Saturday, train on a Thursday night together. Even the grand final week, had one kid with an exam. And then every week you'd have 4 or 5 blokes at the start of training walk past you with big bags full of food because they're on duty to cook dinner. So that meant 20 minutes into training, they do the warm-up and they go, we're cooking dinner tonight, and up they trot. And I can't say anything as the coach. I go, yeah, off you go. Otherwise, you don't get fed.
Given that was mid coaching career to date, would you do it again?
Oh, Monash or uni club?
Monash. Yeah.
I'd do Monash again. They're great. There's some really, really fantastic people. And they went through a bit of a transition there as well. They realised that after me, Pass took over and still made finals and in B grade. And then they lost a few of the young fellas because it's hard to keep them, because if they're country boys and they get jobs back in country. And they've sort of gone through a bit of transition phase where they sort of went from trying to push to 8. They're in Clayton. The guys that work in the city, it's really tough to get there to train by 6 o'clock on a weeknight. So that's the hurdle that they have, Monash. But yeah, definitely. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And they're uni fellas. They've got no money. So they're literally, we went to a pre-season camp, and I wondered why. We were all standing. So we played at Lawn. We stayed there the night, went in for dinner at the Lawn pub, and the boys were all just sitting there. And we were going, what are you doing? And then they all got up and walked down the street. They all went to the chicken and chips because it's like $5 for chicken and chips. and we're all ordering our Palmers as the coaches and everything. And then they all came back and just sat there. And I'm going, what? And a few of the coaches, they've got no money. They can't afford to go and buy jugs. And they can't afford to go and buy the expensive grog. So it was quite an expensive night, that one.
You've come to a time now in your career where you're transitioning from Parade to St Bernard's to take up head of sport. Having learned the things that you've learned and establishing and identifying the importance of communication, a cultural platform, What does the first 30 days look like for taking on that role? Well, I'm not sure when you're starting, sorry, but
yeah, it'll be next year. Yeah, it's I've still got to finish off, obviously, the last bit at Parade this year, and then director of sport at St Bernard's, which will marry in nicely with the footy coaching job. But look, I'll probably reflection of the Parade. It came in a bit too gun ho with my ideas of from my time at Salesian College as a head of sport there and involved there, that this is how it's done. Whereas the Parade program has been set up for a while, and I needed to just come in and just go with the flow a little bit. Probably made some big changes sort of straight away. And in hindsight, need to just sit back and just observe first, and to listen, essentially. Listen to the way things have been done there, the way they do things. Because every time you make a change, if you don't necessarily have the trust and the backing, there will be some hesitancy from that. So, so there is there's an approach that I'm sort of going to be taking to it, definitely. Like, even with some staff that are AFLW and local clubs around the area as well. That'll be interesting little conversation. We'll talk footy and all that sort of stuff. So, and probably the thing with Parade is we was very separated in staff rooms, and probably didn't engage enough with other staff members just to chat and just to understand where people are at. And that's probably the biggest one that I've taken away, that first sort of 30 days. The kids will jump on board. Like, if you're putting programs in place, I've got no doubt. But the key factor is your staff and the people working under you.
Yeah, understanding multiple stakeholder needs and addressing audiences possibly slightly differently. Yeah. Some people want to swing in behind quickly. Others are there to judge. I don't mean harshly, but that talent to listen is a vital one for any coach. In developing rapport.
It's probably something I'm not, like, in reflection, even with my coaching a little bit, it's probably something I'm not great at. So I'm going to have to work pretty hard at it, and make sure that I am sort of stopping myself from talking about me a little bit.
I think the first good step in that is identification. So you should be at least pleased or proud of yourself for being aware. Some people don't even get that moment of awareness. So I think you've done a very good job there, Paul. You've only got one more question. It's from the audience. It seems to be someone working off their iPhone. He just wants to know, how important was your father in the development of your success, and how much do you attribute your success to his success?
He's working off the iPhone there, Dad. So no, very, very important. The family support and everything that you get. And look, even like Monash, we reflect on that, and it was always they were always family coming down and watching from on the little hill there behind. As soon as you get your kids involved, and it's really important to bring your kids, if you've got kids or to get them there so the boys can see. Boys and girls, that is. I always take the girls into the AFLW rooms if I could, to see that it's normal, like it's that there are other priorities, that you may not get everything done, you may not get all your vision coded, you may not get all the feedback sheets back, but then if they're seeing what else is happening in life, and getting them there to the games, and that is really, really important, because then they build that bond with you as well.
We've just got it. It's not so much a question, but a statement from Brett, just saying, culture is king, and football in isolation can't give you nearly the reward it can give if you're connected with the rest of your life. So I imagine that, when we've seen, maybe this started with Alistair Clarkson. I don't know why I'm attributing it directly. I think he has a sense of other parts of his life. We see it developing at an elite level, through Richmond and even possibly the Western Bulldogs. It's a vitally important lesson to pass around to all of our community coaches, all of our semi-elite coaches, and even players, that there there are, like the Monash Blues boys, your exams are important. You got to get those done. You're not going to be fed by your career. So it's good to hear that at all levels, like yourself, Paul, that these things are being reinforced, so that we're finding that joy in something within the context of our broader lives. I had a tale told to me today by one of the community members of Red Hill, who just reflected on the fact that his whole team, the seniors, men's and women's, do a lap of the ground post-match first to do rubbish collection prior to going in for anything else. So they're part of the community. They respect the space that they operate in. They join in with their club, and they look after their place. So it was a really good lesson to hear.
Yeah, and they're getting that buy-in from them is from all your playing group to do that, is because there'll be reluctance at the start. But if you explain it well, and you also do it with them and demonstrate that and it's, I think, a big one for especially men coaches, is it's okay to be emotional. Like it's okay to we Monash in B grade, we needed to beat, of all places, we played St Bede's at St Bede's. They're on top. If we win, we make the finals. And there was, I said to my assistant coach, I said, I'm going to actually deliberately be emotional at the start of the game, like in the talk, because I just feel it's like I want to, and it could go completely belly up. You could get them completely way too over aroused for the game, but and it was pretty easy because one of my St Bede's guys had passed away a couple of years before, so I was able to easily bring it on when I mentioned him. But it was all the mateship and what we're doing here, what we need today, all this sort of stuff, and the emotion that I had some of these young kids in front of me crying, like bawling. And I've sort of gone, I'm not inside. I'm going, have I gone too far with this emotion stuff? But we end up beating them and make the finals. So it's sort of, granted, some beats, but they were already locked in at the top spot. So they pulled 4 or 5 off the ground. So that was pretty handy. But we got over the line and played finals in B grade for the first time in, I think, for a long time, actually.
Did you pay him a slab?
There was a lot of that talk post game. It was at St Bede's in the social rooms as well. So there was some interesting conversations. And
that went on in the eastern suburbs where I grew up every second week in the last 2 or 3 weeks leading into finals.
Yeah. So no, it was good. It was
But it was a keg back then. It was a keg.
There you go. It's changed a bit.
Paul, I think that's it's a really nice way to wrap up, actually, because when culture is met by authenticity, then you've got a truth. And we can work at culture superficially, and sometimes we'll come up short, and it won't be. It's very hard to be followed or to join in on. But when you build relationship and you have an openness, and you can show that perhaps it's that vulnerability that comes with memories of being a part of something at the same place, and you're trying to take another team on a journey. I think people like to hear that, and I think that's in some ways what we're trying to do within the context of having these conversations, is learn from people who have been open to the highs and the lows, who aren't highly defensive about what they've achieved or not achieved, but actually have just enjoyed a journey of some great moments and the people that they've connected with. And I appreciate you taking the time to share all of that. I've definitely learned a lot from it. Certainly learned a lot as a part-time coach of young women, and that understanding, every time I gain a little bit more about understanding how to communicate, I feel I may well be better equipped to go back and do it again at some stage. So thank you very much for that. I do apologise, because in any other forum, if we were face to face, there would be a bottle of wine or something to offer up as appreciation, and we will find a way. We will find a way.
It's a pleasure. It's it's just something hopefully people in here tonight and who watch it later can take one or two things away. And I know we spoke about that yesterday. I don't necessarily like in these to talk about the journey and everything, but if there's something if there's a little snippet there that you can use, whether it's your thoughts or if it's something that the skills stuff, I'm not sure what it is that you take from it. If there's something you can use for your coaching, then if it's one thing, then that's been beneficial from a developed PD point of view. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your modesty. There's more than just a couple of snippets, and really appreciate it. To everyone who showed up, guys, thank you. Please feel free to throw the questions up on the chat. Paul, I might just get in contact with you after this. You were referencing a book. Was it a book or a video?
No, it's a website.
I might see if we can find that, and we'll just post that in the post-interview link. I've got a wave from Tony Pacella. Maybe he's wanting to come off mute, and he knows what it is, or he's just waving to say goodbye. Whichever way, thank you, guys. Thank you again for all showing up, and look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Thanks, Grovesy, and thank you, Rod Groves, for supporting your son. Glad to have you along. See you guys.
See you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.